Hello and welcome to another look at our local federal election run in Bendigo. We're very fortunate today to have with us the federal senator, Senator Mitch Fifield. Welcome, Mitch.
Good to be here, Dennis.
Now, you wear a few hats, Mitch. You are Minister for Communications and also the Arts.
That's right.
You are also, what, Patron Senator for Bendigo. What's that mean?
Well, it means that there's a person in the federal parliament, a Liberal representative who can help support the local area and be a voice for them in an area where there isn't a lower house Liberal member of parliament.
Oh, I see. That's how it works. So it's the lower. It's covering us really for not having a federal Liberal
That's
member.
right.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
You're moving around a lot, and you know you're here in Bendigo today to support Megan Purcell. In your movements around, there's a lot of discussion about the voter apathy, the level of voter apathy in Australia at the moment. People just generally being cheesed off with people saying they're going to do this and either not doing it or doing it the opposite when they win office. Is that something you're experiencing in meeting people? And I'll use an example, 2010, the reports I have indicate that 3 million Australians who were entitled to vote failed to vote. That's terrible in a country this size. Is that something you can explain? Why are people so cheesed off with politics?
Well, I look at it in a more positive light. We actually have very high levels of voter engagement in Australia compared to comparable democracies. Take the United States, where typically you will only have about 30% of people voting in a national election. Now, sure, we have compulsory voting in Australia, but we have a very high level of community engagement, and sure, there are people who will be a bit cheesed off with one side or the other, or all parties in politics. But I'm constantly heartened as I move around the community, talking to people about their degree of interest in the future of the country. So I've got to say, I'm someone who's very positive.
I can't remember who I spoke to at this level at the time, Mitch, but, and you've said you call you Mitch, so I'm not being disrespectful there, I hope.
That's my name.
That's your name. Yeah, but I remember saying at one point, who was going to cop the poison chalice of communications in the Turnbull government, given all the trouble around NBN. Now in Bendigo, we've been left high and dry. We have Shepparton and Ballarat. We're dead centre right in the middle of the state. Why has Bendigo missed out, and what are you doing, or what can you do if you return to government to fix that?
Sure. Well, you're right. When we came into government, the NBN was essentially a failed project. When Malcolm Turnbull became the Minister for Communications, what he discovered was that nationwide, despite Labor having been in office for 6 years, despite them having spent $6.5 billion on the NBN, there were only 51,000 people who they had connected to the NBN. In Bendigo, there were only 77 people who Labor had connected to the NBN. That's after 6 years and $6.5 billion. Labor were actually meant to have 1 million people hooked up to the NBN by the end of 2013. So they missed their own rollout targets by about 83%. And so badly managed was the project that contractors to NBN had downed tools in 4 states. So it was essentially a failed project, and Malcolm Turnbull had to bring order to where there was chaos. And as a result of the approach that Malcolm took, where he put in place a new chair, a new board, a new management, with a new attitude and a new mandate, today nationwide there are now 2.6 million Australians who can hook up to the NBN. That's about a quarter of all premises. By this time next year, about half of all premises nationwide will be able to access the NBN, and by 2020, the entire nation will be covered. Now, Bendigo.
Well, I was wondering, yeah, with Bendigo,
yeah, with Bendigo
specifically.
Yeah, with Bendigo, it is certainly not as far advanced as some other communities, but it's further advanced than a lot of other communities in Victoria and around the nation. So I said that when we came into office, there are only 77 people who are actually hooked up to the NBN. That's now 5,000 people in the Bendigo electorate who are hooked up to the NBN. There are 11,000 people in total who can access the NBN in the electorate of Bendigo, should they choose to do so. There's 5,000 premises that are currently under construction And between now and September 2018, there'll be about another 60,000 premises that will either be able to access the NBN or that will be under construction. So we have dramatically increased the rollout of the NBN nationwide, given ultimately we've got to connect about 12,000 premises around the nation. It's got to be done in a staged way. It can't be done everywhere at the same time. But the good news is that through our approach, the NBN will be completed 6 to 8 years sooner than would have been the case under the approach of our predecessors. So it's coming at a pace.
It's coming, yep. It's the letters in the mail in a way.
No, I mean, just to give you an example, as I said before, Labor in 6 years connected 51,000 premises. We did 10,000 more than that nationwide in the last month alone.
Well,
NBN now is rolling out about 60-odd thousand premises each and every month.
Well, I'll ask you that. We've had Senator Conroy sit there when this was all, go. I think it was only a couple of days actually before the Gillard thing happened.
Yep.
Now, could it be said that perhaps Senator Conroy bit off more than he could chew in terms of a great idea with a lot of money involved, so great technology, great for Australia, but it's come at a time when we can't afford it as a nation, and you've copped it because everyone has an expectation now that this is going to happen. Given our economic situation as a country, is it too big for us to deliver in the current, with the current level of expectation?
No, it's not too big.
So it's achievable and affordable?
It's achievable and it's affordable under the approach that we're taking, and people will actually get it. People were going to be waiting years and years and years, at least to 2026, possibly 2028 under Labor to get the NBN. So it is coming to people a darn side sooner than would have been the case under our predecessors. And locally, Labor are holding out some false hope. They've essentially looked at those areas that we're going to get NBN, fibre to the node, in this electorate in 2017, and they've said, oh, don't worry, you can all have fibre to the premise in 2017. But what Labor haven't told the people of Bendigo is that where they were scheduled to get fibre to the node in 2017, they will have to wait a number of years to get fibre to the premise because the planning work will have to be done. The rollout of fibre to the node will have to be put on hold. Also, with fibre to the premises, people have their front yards dug up. So Labor are holding out a false hope. Under Labor, people will wait many years longer in Bendigo to get the NBN than they would under our rollout.
We're a sizeable community here, and outside Geelong, arguably, the central hub in Victoria in regional terms. So it's an important. We have a great hospital and education level of facility. If I look at it, and I look at, say, a place like Rockhampton, similar in size, they've copped some flack because outlying areas rely on satellite delivery of NBN equivalent services. A lot of flack this morning on ABC's AM program around the fact that people are complaining that data allowance is not sufficient and the cost of the data is too great. Are we going to see the same problems here in outlying areas around Bendigo?
Well,
or is that a concern to you, Minister? Sorry, as a minister.
Look, we take what we call a multi-technology mix approach, which means some areas will have fibre to the premise, some will have fibre to the node. In some of the capital cities, we're using the existing pay TV cables, the HFC network, to hook people up. So a
hybrid type system.
Yeah, that's right. In some urban fringe areas, we're using fixed wireless, which is a terrific service. But for about 200,000 premises in regional and remote areas, the NBN will be delivered by way of satellite. And I think satellite has got a bad reputation as a result of the previous government's interim satellite service, where they simply didn't purchase enough capacity on satellite to service the need.
And is that something you can overcome? You're confident?
Yeah, well, that interim satellite service was a shocker. So those who've been on it have a jaundiced view of satellite. With Sky Muster, people are going to get good download speeds. People will be able to get to 25 megabit per second download speeds. They'll be able to have a monthly data allowance of 150 gigabytes. So that's important, but also for uses such as distance education. We're not going to expect those to come out of the household data allowance. There will be a separate allocation of 50 gigabytes per child, up to 3 kids, and so that'll be a separate port. So we're making sure that there's good allowance for data, that there are good speeds, and those who have hooked up to it, I think, will find it's a really good service. And we did hear on AM this morning, you're right, someone say that actually the Sky Muster service is a heck of a lot better than what they've experienced before. So it's a good service, and I think people, when they're hooked up, will find that it does suit their needs.
A couple of quick things to finish off with, Mitch. Our local federal member, Lisa Chesters, made an announcement recently that she had secured a commitment for $21 million roughly for the ABC, with a focus on delivering women's sport and content around that, in particular with a focus on women. And, for example, went over really well here in Bendigo because we got the Bendigo Spirit, the ladies' basketball team nationally. Means my daughter could play at a national level. And people can see those games, whether in Townsville or wherever they are. So great news for Bendigo in one way. I've had Malcolm Turnbull sit there when he was wearing the same portfolio you are now. And then I heard Malcolm, he said what a great thing this is that we're doing. I can't figure out why 21 million would be thrown at the ABC, which is what would have happened 20 years ago in technology terms, when you've got homegrown product like an IPTv service like this that Channel 31s are moving across to now. Is there any logic there, and what can you offer as an alternative to that? Like that kind of money, we 5% of that would see us run for a couple of years and do everything locally.
Well, the ABC is an organisation we give $3.1 billion to over the next 3 years. Labor said that they would give them a bit of extra money for women's sport. There's absolutely nothing to stop the ABC at the moment from, within their $3.1 billion over the next 3 years, from purchasing the rights to women's sporting events. That's entirely something that's available to them at the moment. A lot of the commercial networks have of late purchased some significant women's sporting events. So this is something that can happen now. There doesn't need to be additional supplementation to the ABC.
The distinction I guess I'm getting at, Mitch, though, is this. The ABC have already indicated there's no commitment whatsoever, as I understand it, to run this on mainstream free-to-air TV, which is almost like an old dinosaur anyway, fading away. And we can see that happening right across the country. But from my point of view, they're saying it may well run online through their ABC options, their iView or whatever it is. And the networks are doing those sorts of things too. We're already doing that. We were the first in Australia to do it. I just do not get how Malcolm Turnbull, and he actually held us up on ABC, talking to Fran Kelly on national radio, said, look at the wonderful things they're doing with Bendigo IPTv, yet we're overlooked. Everyone talks about the innovation nation, whether it's Liberal or Labor, same story, but no support in terms of funding or any real commitment to developing local jobs in the creative and the arts areas, which I know you wear that hat as well. Can you see any scope there for supporting technology like this when the networks are becoming so Sydney-centric under this new media regime?
Well, women's sport, which is the subject that we're talking about.
Well, even generally, though.
Yeah, but just finishing off on that, I mean, it's important. Women's sport wants to be valued like other sports. So when you've got big national competitions, they want the right to be able to sell their product and to get a return on their product. And I think
they can't do on the ABC anyway.
I think they should have that right. Well, the opposition's proposition is that money would be used by the ABC to purchase those rights. But women's sporting organisations, they want to be recognised for what they are, and they want their commercial rights to be purchased accordingly. Now, as I say, ABC, $3.1 billion over 3 years, nothing to stop them doing that at the moment. The commercials are certainly availing themselves of that. But you're right, there's community media, which is another avenue for sharing.
And is that something you can see a coalition government, if returned, supporting in a realistic way? You've had licence rebates and things for the mainstream guys, and as I said, here in Bendigo, with the way things are set up now, we're going to have one TV station, 2 radio stations, and the main newspaper, all owned or all operated by the same group out of Sydney. with only sales teams here effectively.
Well, and community media is one of the ways that you can ensure that there is diversity in the people.
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Do have a choice. And one of the great things about new technology is that the costs of sharing material are substantially reduced compared to the old styles of broadcasting of radio and TV.
You've only got to look at where we are today and how we're doing this compared to how the big boys would do it.
That's right. And and
so is it technology you believe in though, Mitch? Like, do you see this as the future?
Yes.
And worthy of government support though?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why I'm looking to reform media law is because the media laws that we have, which essentially were intended to stop concentration of ownership and thereby make sure there's diversity. Well, those media laws only apply to commercial radio, commercial TV and newspapers. Those media laws don't recognise that the internet and other forms of media exist. So I want to get rid of those media laws that are outdated so that organisations can configure themselves in the ways that best suit them. And one of the reasons why we're confident that's a good approach is because there are so many different forms of media available to people that diversity is, or lack of, is less of a concern now.
Absolutely. One final question, Mitch. In the Age Online today, there's a report suggesting that 80% of people, respondents to a survey, have indicated their primary concern going into this election is in fact the state of the economy and the national debt. Now, I don't know, that's my view too, certainly I feel that way, but I don't know whether that's reflective of the majority of 80% of the whole population. But that's the report. I guess I look back at somebody like you and I think you spent, what, 7 or 8 years or something working as an advisor to Peter Costello. Do you miss those good old days when we were in a situation where we didn't have the debt we have now? And what's preventing us from moving forward for our kids and our grandchildren to give them a country the way that was bequeathed to the electorate back then?
Well, I mean, I think Peter Costello did an incredible job paying off $96 billion of Labor's debt. He left us debt-free, and to watch year after year over 6 years of Labor, budget deficits return and debt start to rack up again, breaks your heart.
People will say, and I'm only trying to be fair, people will say, and I know one guy in particular would say straight away, yeah, but they sold a lot of assets. I mean, is there a way for us to trade out of where we are now, drawing on what your experiences back then with Howard and Costello?
Well, look, we've got to live within our means, firstly, in terms of budgeting, but what we've also got to do is to grow the economy. And that's why we have our plan for jobs and growth. And I think in a time of economic transition, Australians are looking for a government that has a plan. We do. And it's interesting that our political opponents now have completely given up talking about a plan or having any pretense of a plan. Instead, they're spending each and every day now lying about things that they say we're going to do or things we're going to privatise. We've got a plan, they don't, they're scaremongering. We want to get on with the business of helping to grow the economy, create jobs so that we're in a position to pay down debt and get ourselves back into balance.
Mitch, thank you so much for being so forthright and enjoyed the conversation. I'd call it a conversation rather than an interview. I appreciate the way you've tackled it. Good luck for the rest of the campaign.
Thanks, Tim.
We'll see where we end up, and if you end up Communications Minister in a coalition government, we'll look forward to maybe having a cup of coffee or a catch-up in terms of this new technology. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Terrific.